The clink of the glass. That's what I remember most. It's the first thing I hear when I close my eyes, even years later. Not the shouting that came after, not the slam of the car door, just the ting, ting, ting of my father-in-law's fork against his wine glass. A sharp, clean sound that sliced right through the comfortable murmur of the dining room. The laughter died instantly. A toast, Frank said. His voice wasn't loud, but it was heavy. It was a voice built of rolled steel and shipping contracts, a voice that owned the room, the polished mahogany table, the house we were sitting in, and he believed everyone at the table. My wife Sarah sitting next to me, she was beaming. Her hand was resting on her stomach, her eyes shining with a kind of light I hadn't seen in years. This was supposed to be our night, our moment. We had just announced that after 2 long, heartbreaking years of trying, after the false positives, the hushed crying, the sterile smell of doctors' offices, we were finally pregnant. I felt Sarah's hand squeeze mine under the table. This was it. The moment the family finally truly came together. Frank raised his glass. To my new grandchild. People smiled, glasses lifted. Here, here. To the baby. And Frank continued, his eyes finding mine, a cold, appraising stare across the battlefield of the dinner table, to making sure that child, that my grandson, has the future he deserves. The air in the room didn't just get cold, it froze. I could feel my brother-in-law Derek smirking beside me. I could smell his cologne, something sharp and metallic and expensive like new money. A child needs stability, Sarah, Frank said, talking to her but looking at me. He needs security, a foundation, which is why I'm announcing tonight that Derek will be managing the boys' college fund. Sarah's smile froze. Her hand in mine went limp. And Art. My name is Arthur, but he always called me Art, like I was a painting he didn't understand or a hobby he didn't approve of. I appreciate your ambitions, I really do, but ambitions don't pay for diapers. Ambitions don't pay a mortgage. My throat closed up. I could feel the blood rushing to my face, a hot, shameful tide. I could hear my own pulse thumping in my ears. So, Frank said, leveling his glass at me like the barrel of a gun, my gift to you, to my grandson. I've got an opening in the shipping department at the warehouse, 6 a.m. sharp Monday. It's time to join the real world, son. He drank. The silence that followed, it was deafening. It was the sound of my life breaking in two. My wife, she pulled her hand away from mine.
She just let go.
That was the humiliation. It wasn't just the job offer which was a public execution of my career. It wasn't just the dismissal of my life's work. It was the silence. It was the empty space in my palm where her hand used to be. And it was the small, almost invisible nod she gave her father. It was agreement. It was the end. I should have seen it coming, I really should have. The truth is, the humiliation had been there for years, a low-grade fever, a constant hum beneath every family dinner, every holiday. It was the price of admission for marrying Sarah. It was the tax I paid for being who I was. My name is Arthur. I'm a musician. Or, I was a musician. I played guitar. I wrote songs. It wasn't a hobby. It was me. It was the only language I knew how to speak fluently. I played in bars that smelled like stale beer and regret. I played in coffee shops that smelled like burnt beans. But I loved it. I loved the scratch of the pick on the string. I loved the moment when a melody clicked, when the words felt true, when a small crowd in a dark room felt something with me. When I met Sarah, she loved it too. She was the one who saw me at an open mic night, the only one not staring at her phone. She used to come to my gigs sitting in the front row, her eyes locked on me, like I was the only person in the world. She'd help me carry my amp. She'd listen to rough demos in my car, her head tilted, and say, "That chorus art, that's the one." She understood the art. Her family, they understood spreadsheets. Her father, Frank, had built a logistics empire from 2 broken-down trucks and a sheer brutal force of will. He was a man who believed in sweat in numbers, in 18-hour days, in tangible results. He saw my guitar case as a briefcase full of empty promises. Her brother, Derek, was his shadow cast in expensive wool. Derek worked in finance. Derek drove a German car. Derek talked about leveraging assets and market projections. Derek was the standard. I was the failed comparison. For 5 years, I'd been the artistic son-in-law, the sensitive one, the one who hadn't found himself yet. I remember our first Thanksgiving together. Frank, carving the turkey, had looked at me and said, "So, Art, what's your 5-year plan for this music thing? You got a 401k, a pension. What's the end game?" I tried to explain. "It's more about building a following, Frank the Craft." He'd cut me off, laughing that short, barking laugh. "Derek, you hear this? He's building a following. Derek just closed a new merger. That's an end game." I'd just nodded. I'd smiled. I'd swallowed my pride along with the dry turkey. I did it for Sarah, because I loved her, and I thought she loved me for who I was, not what I earned. But the pregnancy one, it changed everything. That night, the night of the toast, it was supposed to be a celebration. We'd been trying for so long. We'd had failures, false starts. I remember holding her on the bathroom floor, her body shaking with sobs after another negative test. I remember the silence in the car on the way home from the fertility clinic. And then, finally, good news. I remember standing by the fireplace before dinner, Sarah holding my hand. "They're going to be so happy, Art," she'd whispered, her voice thick with joy. "This is it. This is what brings everyone together." And they were happy. When we told them Sarah's mother cried, she hugged me. Frank clapped me on the back, a heavy, solid blow. "Well, it's about time," he'd boomed, a real, genuine smile on his face. I relaxed. I let my guard down. I thought, finally, I'm in. I'm part of this. I'm going to be a father. He sees me. How stupid I was. When Frank made that toast, it wasn't just an insult. It was a public execution. It was premeditated. He didn't just offer me a job. He told a room full of people, our family, our friends, that I was incapable, that I was a charity case, that my wife and child needed to be rescued from me. I tried to laugh it off. I remember my voice sounding thin, strained. That's very generous, Frank. But I've got a new EP coming out and the tour is looking..." Frank cut me off. He didn't even raise his voice. "Gigs? You're talking about gigs?" He shook his head, a look of profound theatrical disappointment. "The boy isn't even born yet, and you're already a disappointment." Derek snorted into his napkin. "Art, just take the job. It's stable. You can play guitar on the weekends, like a hobby. Lots of people have hobbies." I looked at Sarah. I was drowning. I was suffocating. I was begging her with my eyes to throw me a rope. "Say something. Defend me. Tell them who I am. Tell them you believe in me." She just looked down at her plate. She picked up her fork. She started cutting a piece of asparagus, her movements precise, as if the most important thing in the world was the angle of her knife. She couldn't look at me. That silence, her silence, that was the real humiliation. It was my father-in-law's blade, but it was my wife's hand that twisted it. I sat there for another hour, an entire hour. I watched them bring out dessert, a chocolate torte. I listened to them talk about the new warehouse, about Derek's portfolio, about what colour they should paint the nursery. Our nursery. "Blue," Sarah's mother said.
Frank, you always look best in blue.
They were talking about my son. And I wasn't even in the room. I was a ghost at my own celebration, my own execution. When it was finally time to leave, I stood up. I didn't say goodbye. I didn't look at anyone. I walked out the front door, the sound of good night echoing behind me like I was in a tunnel. I got in the car. The leather seats felt cold. I started the engine. The sound of it turning over was the loudest sound in the world. The humiliation. It wasn't just a feeling, it was a poison, and it was already in my veins. The drive home was 5 miles. It felt like 500. The silence in the car was heavier, colder than the silence at the dinner table. It was a dead silence, a vacuum thick with things unsaid. I gripped the steering wheel, my knuckles, white the bones, stark against my skin. I could feel Sarah staring out the passenger window, the suburbs slipping by like a movie she wasn't watching. The streetlights flashed on, off, across her face. I waited. I waited for her to say something, to apologize, to say he was out of line, to say, "I'm so sorry, baby." Nothing, just the whisper of the tires on the asphalt. I finally broke. My voice was tight, a wire drawn thin, choking me. "You just sat there." She didn't turn. She kept watching the houses go by. "What did you want me to do, Art? Make a scene, ruin the night?" He ruined the night. What did I want? I wanted my wife to defend me. I wanted you to tell your father that I'm not his employee, that I'm not a child. I wanted you to have my back. She turned then. Her face wasn't sad. It wasn't apologetic. It was hard. It was a face I didn't recognize. It was Frank's face. "My father is scared," she said, her voice flat. "Scared he humiliated me, Sarah. He tore me apart in front of our entire family. He disrespected me. He disrespected us. He's scared for his grandchild," she yelled, and the sound of her shouting in the small, confined space of the car made me flinch. "He's scared because we're having a baby. Art, a real living, breathing human being who needs things. He needs insurance. He needs a future. He needs stability. And you're talking about an EP." She said the word EP like it was garbage, the same word she used to whisper with excitement listening to my demos in this very car. "That's my work, Sarah. That's my life." "It's not work. It's a hobby," she cried, and the tears came then hot and angry. Not tears of sadness for me, tears of frustration with me. "Work is what my dad does. Work is what Derek does. Work is getting a paycheck, Art, a steady one. When was the last time you paid the electric bill without me having to move money from my savings?" It was a low blow. It was also true. I pulled into our driveway. The house looked dark. I killed the engine. The silence rushed back in, but this time it was ringing in my ears. "I can't believe you," I whispered, staring through the windshield. "That man just offered to make your brother, Derek, the financial guardian of our child, our son, like I'm incompetent, like I'm nothing, and you agreed." "I didn't agree," she said, her voice dropping. "You didn't say no." She took a deep breath, a shaky, ragged breath, and when she spoke, the anger was gone, replaced by something worse. Exhaustion. "Art, I love you, I do. I love your music, but he's right." My head snapped toward her. "What?" "He's right," she repeated, and this time she looked at me, her eyes dead. "It's not a game anymore. We need a plan, And playing gigs isn't a plan. I got out of the car. I couldn't breathe. The air felt too thick. I fumbled for my keys and walked into the house. Our house. The one I had painted. The room I had sanded the floors in for a week, my hands raw and bleeding. She followed me inside, her footsteps heavy. Art, don't walk away. You already walked away, Sarah, back at that table when you let go of my hand. I went into our bedroom. I pulled my old canvas duffel bag from the top of the closet. Dust motes danced in the lamplight. What are you doing? Stop it! You're being dramatic. You're acting like a child. Am I? I'm acting like a child. I zipped the bag. I walked out of the bedroom and into the spare room, the room that was supposed to be the nursery. It was empty, painted a pale, hopeful yellow. In the corner was a flat-packed box, the crib, the one we were supposed to build together this weekend. I turned to her. She was standing in the doorway, one hand on her stomach, a protective, instinctive gesture, holding the child that had just separated us. If you think I'm that useless, if you think I'm that much of a failure that I can't even be trusted with my own son, then maybe I shouldn't be here. I wanted her to stop me. I was begging her. With every line on my face, I was begging her to grab my arm, to cry, to say I was wrong, to say they were wrong. But she just stood there. She didn't move. Maybe you shouldn't, she whispered, until you figure out how to be a father, until you decide to grow up. The words hit me harder than Frank's because they came from her. I walked past her. I picked up my guitar case by the front door. I opened the door. The night air was cold. It smelled like rain. I looked back one last time. She was still standing by the nursery, watching me, her face a mask. I left. The door clicked shut behind me. That click. It was the sound of a lock I didn't have a key for. I didn't drive away, not right away. I slept in my car that night, parked down the street under a tree. I watched the lights in my own house go out one by one until the whole house was dark. That was the separation, not a piece of paper, not a judge. It was a click. It was a dark window. It was the moment I realized the person I loved most in the world believed I was a failure. I told myself it was temporary, a few weeks, a grand gesture. I'd prove them wrong, all of them. I'd take my music, I'd take this fire, this rage, this humiliation, and I'd turn it into something so bright they couldn't ignore it. I'd write the best songs of my life. I'd get a record deal. I'd come back not as a failure, but as a success. I crashed on a buddy's couch, Mark. He was a drummer. He understood, or I thought he did. Just for a few days, man, I said, dropping my duffel bag. Just until I get the tour sorted. Days turned into weeks. I poured every ounce of anger I had into my music. I called contacts. I booked gigs. I played open mic nights. I played in bars where people talked right over my songs. I played on street corners for pocket change. The world didn't care about my pain. It didn't care about my art. The contacts didn't call back. The gigs paid enough for a beer and a burger. The EP I was so proud of, it felt thin, whiny, self-indulgent. I got texts from Sarah. At first they were angry. Where are you? You think this is funny? Running away. Then they were worried. Art, please, I'm scared. Just come home. We can talk. I'd stare at the message, my thumb hovering over the screen. What could I say? I'm sleeping on a couch and I made $20 last night. I was paralyzed by the shame. Then the texts just became updates. Clinical, cold. Had a doctor's appointment today. Everything is fine. We heard the heartbeat. It's strong. I felt him kick. Each text was a knife. I was a father, but I wasn't there. How could I go back with what my guitar case full of ones and fives, my pockets full of shame? Mark, the one with the couch, finally tapped me on the shoulder one morning. He looked embarrassed. Art, man, I love you, but you gotta go. My girlfriend's moving in. She needs the space, and honestly, man, you're a mess. I was on the street. I found a room, a tiny damp place above a 24-hour kebab shop. The walls were thin. I could hear the neighbours fighting. The carpet smelled like grease and old cigarettes. It was all I could afford. I needed money, real money, not gig money. The irony. It was brutal. I got a job washing dishes at a 24-hour diner. My hands, the hands that used to hold a guitar, the hands I used to write songs with. They were now raw cracked and smelled like bleach and industrial soap. I'd stand over that steaming sink for 10 hours, sweat dripping down my back, listening to the clatter of plates, and I'd just disappear. I started drinking. At first, it was just one beer after my shift, to take the edge off, to quiet the sound of Frank's voice, of Sarah's words. Then it was two. Then it was a cheap bottle of 5 o'clock gin I'd take back to my room. The clink of the bottle against the glass. It was the only music I had left. The downfall wasn't a sudden crash, it was a slow slide, a quiet erosion of who I was. I stopped writing songs. What was the point? I stopped answering my phone. The worst night. The absolute bottom. I was at a bar, the one on the corner. It was raining. I was soaked. My shift had been hell. My phone buzzed in my pocket. A text. I pulled it out. My hands were shaking, not from the cold, but from the need for a drink. It was from Sarah. Leo, he's here. 7 pounds, 2 ounces. He's healthy. I stared at the words. Leo. My son. My son was born. I was in a bar. I smelled like dishwater. I hadn't seen my wife in 3 months. I should have run. I should have gotten in my beat-up car and driven to that hospital. I should have begged. I should have crawled. But the shame! It was a physical weight. It pinned me to that bar stool. What kind of father was I? Frank was right. Derek was right. Sarah was right. I was a failure. I turned my phone off. I looked at the bartender. Another one, I whispered. I drank until the name Leo didn't hurt anymore. I drank until I didn't feel anything at all. I woke up in my room. The sun was streaming in, sharp and accusing. I was still in my wet clothes. I had missed it. I had missed the most important moment of my life. I looked at my hands. They were shaking. I looked at my guitar case in the corner, the one my dad gave me before he died. He'd saved for a year to buy it for me. Don't ever let anyone tell you your music isn't worth it, Arthur, he'd said. I picked it up. I walked to the corner. There was a pawn shop. I walked out with $80. I bought another bottle. The downfall was complete. I had sold my past for a few more hours of numbness. I wasn't Art the musician. I wasn't Arthur the husband. I wasn't even a father. I was just a ghost, a dishwasher, a drunk, a man who had proven every single person right. Time, it just disappeared. It became a thick grey fog. My life was a greasy grey loop. Wake up, head pounding, throat burning. Walk to the diner, wash dishes for 10 hours. The smell of burnt coffee and industrial soap in my nose. Walk to the liquor store, walk home, drink, pass out. Repeat. I didn't know if it was Tuesday or Saturday. I didn't know if 6 months had passed or a year. The seasons changed, I just didn't. I was a machine made of shame. Then, one afternoon, a knock. It was different from the landlord's pound. It was soft, hesitant, but it didn't stop. Knock, knock, knock. I ignored it. I pulled the pillow over my head. It smelled like me. It smelled awful. Knock, knock, knock. Go away, I mumbled into the mattress. Leave the notice. I'll pay when I get paid. The knocking stopped. I heard a muffled sound. A cry, a baby. I sat up. The room swam. My head felt like it was full of wet sand. Knock, 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 this time more firm. I stumbled to the door, my hands shaking angry. Who brings a baby here? I pulled the door open, ready to yell. And the world stopped. It was Sarah. She looked tired, so tired, thinner than I remembered. There were dark circles under her eyes, but she was beautiful. She wasn't alone. She was holding a baby carrier. Sarah. My voice was a rasp. I hadn't used it in days. Hello, Art, she said. No anger, no judgment, just a terrible, profound sadness that was worse than anger. I just stared. I couldn't speak. My brain couldn't connect the dots. Can I come in? I stepped back. I was suddenly painfully aware of my apartment, the empty gin bottles on the floor, the overflowing trash can in the corner, the sour smell of beer and unwashed clothes, and me. I tried to kick a bottle under the sofa. She didn't look at the mess. She just looked at me. Her eyes scanned my face, my shaking hands, my stained shirt. You look awful, she said. It was just a fact. I'm not here for you, Art. She cut me off, gentle but firm. I'm here for him. She placed the carrier on my one clean chair. She unbuckled the straps. She lifted him out. A baby. A real solid breathing baby. He had a tuft of dark hair. He was wearing a little blue sleeper with yellow ducks on it. He was perfect. This is Leo, she said. She held him out to me. I froze. I physically recoiled. Sarah, no, I'm filthy. I'm shaking. Hold your son, Art. My arms were trembling. I put them out. She placed him in my arms. He was heavy. He was warm. He smelled like powder and milk and something new. He stirred, his eyes opened. They were blue. He looked right at me. He didn't know me. I was a stranger. I sank onto the edge of my mattress, holding him, my throat burning with something that wasn't gin. He's 6 months old, Sarah said quietly, standing over me. I've been telling my parents I don't know where you are. They think you just left, disappeared. I couldn't look at her. I just stared at my son, his tiny, perfect hand wrapped around my finger which was calloused from scrubbing pans. My dad, she said, her voice breaking. He wants me to file. He got a lawyer, and Derek. She stopped. She was crying now, silent tears rolling down her face. Derek. Derek offered to legally adopt him, to give him his name, the family name, so he'd, be provided for, so he'd have a real father. That was the knife, the final twist. My head snapped up. I looked at her, and the fog of the alcohol, the shame, it all burned away in 1 second of pure, cold rage. No. It was the first word I'd said with any strength in a year. No. Then be his father, Art. She whispered, the tears coming faster. I'm not asking you to be a rock star. I'm not asking you to be my brother. I'm so tired. I'm so tired of doing this alone, and he deserves a dad. He deserves you. She touched his head.
I can't. I can't let him grow up thinking his father didn't want him, because I know you art, the real you, and this,
She waved her hand at the room, at me. This isn't you. She left him with me. She just said, I'll be back in an hour. I'm going to get a coffee. Don't drop him. She left. And I was alone with my son. I just held him. I didn't drink, I didn't move. I just sat on that stained mattress and held my son Leo. I looked at his face. I saw me. I saw Sarah. I saw a reason. I've heard people talk about hitting rock bottom. This wasn't the bottom. The bottom was the pawn shop. The bottom was the text I ignored. This was the cold, hard ground rushing up to meet you. This was the choice. When Sarah came back, I was standing by the window holding him. I'd wiped my face. The light from the window caught the dust motes, and for a second they looked beautiful. He's beautiful, Sarah. I know. I'm sorry for everything. She just nodded, exhausted. What are you going to do, Art? I looked at her. I looked at Leo. I'm going to show up, I said. It was the turning point. It wasn't a miracle. It wasn't a flash of light. It was the smell of baby powder in a room that stank of whiskey. It was hope. The next morning I woke up, and the hangover was there, a familiar hammer behind my eyes. The shake in my hands was real. But the need for a drink, it was overshadowed by something else. The phantom weight of that baby in my arms, the memory of his smell. Show up. I stood in the middle of my room. The first thing I did, I gathered the bottles. The clinking, hollow sound as I threw them in a trash bag was the sound of my old life ending. It took 3 bags. I had to go buy more. I cleaned. I scrubbed the floor. I opened the window even though it was cold. I let the smell of the kebab shop and the city air in, clearing out the stench of my failure. I looked at myself in the cracked bathroom mirror. I was thin. My eyes were haunted, yellowed at the corners. I shaved until the skin was raw, until I saw a face I half recognized. I was a dishwasher. It wasn't enough. It would never be enough. I still had a few dollars left. I used it to buy a bus pass and a new shirt from a thrift store. I had to swallow every last shard of my pride. It was the hardest thing I'd ever done, harder than any song I'd ever written. I took the bus to the suburbs, to that industrial park I used to mock. I walked into the front office of Frank's logistics company. The air smelled like new carpet and strong coffee. The receptionist looked up and her polite smile faded into confusion. Can I help you? My name is Art Harris. My father-in-law, Frank. He mentioned an opening a while ago in shipping. She knew exactly who I was. Her eyes widened. Oh, please have a seat, Mr. Harris. Let me get Mr. Henderson. I sat there for 20 minutes on a hard plastic chair, feeling smaller than I'd ever felt. I watched the trucks pull in and out. I listened to the sound of tape guns. Henderson came out. He was a big guy, a bulldog of a man with a clipboard. He looked like he ate gravel. He didn't shake my hand. He just looked me up and down, my thrift store shirt, my shaking hands. Frank said you might show up one day, he grunted. Said you weren't lazy, just confused. He looked at my hands. Musician right, these ain't gonna last. I'll make 'em last, I said. He stared at me for a long beat. We start at 6, steel-toed boots. You miss one shift, you're gone. You show up smelling like anything, you're gone. Understand?
Yes, sir.
Monday, he said and walked away. That Monday at 5:15 a.m., I was on the bus. It was dark. It was cold. I was wearing boots I'd bought with the last of my money. The work, it was brutal. Lifting boxes, scanning labels. My body screamed. My hands, soft from years of guitar strings, were bleeding by noon. The other guys looked at me. They whispered. They knew who I was. The boss's failed son-in-law. The musician. They smirked. I didn't care. I just kept my head down. I scanned the box. I lifted. I stacked. The sound of the tape gun, the beep of the scanner, the roar of the trucks. That was my new music. At the end of the day, I clocked out. My entire body felt like one solid bruise. But as I rode the bus home, I felt something I hadn't felt in years. Pride. It wasn't the pride of a crowd clapping. It was the quiet, aching pride of earning a day's pay. I got my first paycheck. I held it in my hand. It was real. It was solid. I cashed it. I opened a savings account. I put half of it in. I labelled it Leo. With the other half, I moved. I got a clean apartment. One small room, a mattress on the floor, a hot plate. But it was clean, and it didn't smell like failure. Then I called Sarah. My hand was shaking, but not from the gin. "I have a job," I said. Silence. "What?" "At your dad's place, in the warehouse. And I got a new apartment. It's clean. And I was wondering if I could see him. See Leo." I heard her take a breath. "When?" "Sunday. I'm off Sundays." That Sunday, I showed up at her door. I was wearing new jeans. I was clean-shaven. I wasn't carrying a guitar. I was carrying a bag with diapers formula and a small stuffed giraffe I'd bought. She let me in. It was awkward. She watched my every move. I held him. I learned how to warm a bottle. I learned how to change a diaper. I felt clumsy, useless. But Leo, he just looked at me. I sat on the floor with him. I didn't know what to do. I didn't know any baby songs. So, I did the only thing I knew. I found a pen and on a napkin I started drawing. A little cartoon of a dog with floppy ears. Leo gurgled, and then he laughed, a real bubbling baby laugh. Sarah, standing in the kitchen, leaning against the counter. She smiled, a real tired, hopeful smile. I went every Sunday. I worked every Monday through Saturday. I didn't drink. I saved my money. I drew cartoons for my son. I wasn't Art the musician. I was Arthur, the shipping guy, the dad. I was rebuilding, not my music career. Myself. Months passed, 6, then 8. The work didn't get easier. The boxes were still heavy. The mornings were still dark, but I got stronger. The calluses on my hands were thick. The guys at the warehouse stopped whispering. I just worked. One day, Henderson called me into his office. "Harris," he grunted, "you show up. You're fast. You don't complain. And you're not stupid. I'm making you shift supervisor. It's another $2 an hour." "Thank you, sir." "Don't thank me, just don't screw it up." I was a supervisor. I had a title. I had respect. I showed up at 5:15 a.m. I showed up on Sundays. My new apartment started to feel like a home. I'd bought a cheap easel. In the evenings, instead of a bottle, I'd pick up a pencil. I drew. I drew pictures for Leo, cartoons of giraffes and dogs and a little boy with blue eyes who could fly. My relationship with Sarah, It was changing. It wasn't a romance, it was a partnership. We were friends. We talked about Leo, what he was eating, how he was sleeping. "He's teething," she'd say on the phone. "He was fussy all night. I'm so tired." "Try a cold washcloth," I'd offer. "I read that online, or I can come over after my shift. You can sleep for an hour." And sometimes I did. I'd show up reeking of cardboard and sweat, and I'd wash my hands, and I'd take him, and I'd walk him around the living room while she closed her eyes on the sofa. There was no anger, just two tired parents trying to figure it out. The big moment, the real test, it came on a Sunday. I was at Sarah's playing with Leo on the floor. He was starting to crawl. I was building a block tower. He was knocking it down. The front door opened. Frank. I hadn't seen him, not really, since I'd started at the warehouse. He never came to the floor. I froze, my heart hammered. The old shame, it was right there waiting. He walked into the living room, stopped. He just looked at me, sitting on the carpet in my jeans and a t-shirt, surrounded by primary-coloured blocks. "Arthur," he said. His voice was flat. "Frank." I stood up, wiping my hands on my pants. Sarah came in from the kitchen, her face pale. "Dad, I didn't know you were coming." "Henderson tells me your numbers are good," Frank said to me, ignoring her. "That you're fast, that you're the first one in and the last one out." "It's a good job, Frank." "He says you're a leader." I didn't know what to say. He just grunted. He looked at Leo, who was happily chewing on the red block. "He looks like you," Frank said. I was stunned. I, uh, I was an idiot, Frank." I said the words tumbling out, words I'd practiced in my head 1,000 times. That night, I was selfish. I was scared. I was more worried about my pride than my family. You were right. I needed to grow up. Frank looked at me. He looked at me for a long time. His eyes were softer. He wasn't the monster I'd built in my head. He was just a man who loved his daughter, a man who loved his grandson. He walked over to me. He put a heavy hand on my shoulder. "You know," he said, his voice rough, "it takes a small man to make excuses. It takes a big man to stock a truck." He paused. I was hard on you, Art, but I was scared. Scared for her. Scared for him. Henderson says you're the best man he has." He squeezed my shoulder. "You're doing good. You're a good father." That was it. That was the healing. It wasn't an apology. I didn't need one. It was recognition. He saw me, not as a hobby, not as a failure. He saw me as a man. I looked over his shoulder at Sarah, who was standing in the kitchen doorway, her hand over her mouth, tears streaming down her face. She wasn't crying because she was sad. She was crying because for the first time in a long, long time, we were okay. It was Leo's first birthday. A year since I'd held him in that dark, filthy apartment. A year since I'd started at the warehouse. A year since I'd had a drink. The party was at Sarah's house. It wasn't a big fancy affair like her family used to throw, just us. I walked in, and Frank was already there. He was on the floor. My father-in-law in his expensive slacks on his hands and knees, letting Leo crawl all over him. He was making horse noises. He looked up at me and grinned. "About time you got here, Art. This kid's a monster." Derek was there. He walked over, handed me a beer. I shook my head. "Just water for me, man." He looked surprised then. He nodded. "Respect. Good for you." He looked at me. "Listen, That night, I was a jerk. "Yeah," I said, "me too." We clinked his beer bottle against my water. The tension was gone. We were just two uncles. It was time for presents. Derek, of course, had brought a massive, expensive electric ride-on car. It was parked in the corner of the living room, a monument to his paycheck. "Only the best for my nephew," he boomed. Leo just stared at it, confused by the lights. Then I gave him mine. It felt small. It was wrapped in brown paper. I'd spent 3 months carving it in the evenings, after my shifts. My hands, calloused and sore from the warehouse, learned a new kind of art. I'd carved a little wooden truck. I'd sanded it until it was smooth as silk. I'd painted it bright red with little black wheels that turned. On the side I'd painted one word, Leo. I put it on the floor. Leo crawled right past the expensive plastic car. He made a beeline for the truck. He grabbed it. It was the perfect size for his small hand. He banged it on the floor. He put it in his mouth. And then he pushed it, crawling after it, laughing that deep, bubbling baby laugh. I caught Frank's eye. He was smiling, a real warm smile. He raised his glass of iced tea to me, a different kind of toast. "To Arthur," he said, his voice thick, "a hell of a craftsman, a hell of a father." The party wound down. The guests left. Frank and his wife, Derek. It was just me, Sarah, and a very tired, cake-covered baby. I was packing up my bag, ready to leave, ready to go back to my empty, clean apartment. "Art?" I turned. Sarah was standing by the sink, which was piled high with dishes and wrapping paper. "He's asleep," she said, "finally, but I'm exhausted, and this kitchen is—" She sighed. Could you stay just for a bit? Help me clean up?" It wasn't "I love you." It wasn't "come home." It was "stay." It was everything. "Of course," I said. I rolled up my sleeves. I washed, she dried. We didn't talk much. We just worked, side by side. The clink of the plates, the warm water on my hands, it was the best music I'd ever heard. When we were done, the kitchen was clean. The house was quiet, save for the hum of the baby monitor. She made 2 cups of coffee. We sat at the kitchen table, the same table where she used to sit and cry over bills. "You're really good with him, Art." "I'm trying, Sarah." She reached across the table. She didn't just touch my fingers, she took my hand. I looked at our hands, hers soft, mine rough, calloused, scarred from the warehouse. "Your hands," she whispered, tracing a scar with her thumb. "They're different now," I said. "I know," she said. "Thank you for showing up." There's nowhere else I'd rather be. We sat there in the quiet. It wasn't a fiery romance back from the ashes. It was something different. It was something better. It was real. The reunion. It wasn't a party. It wasn't a big cinematic kiss in the rain. It was 2 people at a clean kitchen table drinking coffee with their son sleeping safely in the next room. She didn't let go of my hand. "Don't go back to your apartment tonight, Art," she whispered. "Just stay." I looked at her, and for the first time I saw the woman I'd married. "Okay," I said. It was peace. And for the first time, I wasn't Art the musician or Arthur the failure. I was just Dad, I was just Arthur. And I was home.